Since ancient times, books have always been considered the repository of humanity's most essential knowledge, right from the first stirrings of thought about the world. Books have taken many forms. They might be ancient writings carved into rock faces, hieroglyphs inscribed on animal skins, or the paper books we know today. It's undeniable that ancient texts and the writings of our ancestors have had an immense influence on the development of humankind. But did you know that throughout history, there have been mysterious books, deemed forbidden or apocryphal writings, that have the potential to completely change our understanding of human history, heaven, hell, or even other worlds? Human curiosity is boundless, and naturally, what is forbidden is often sought out and explored even more. Today, we're going to delve into some of the most famous forbidden texts in human history. Welcome to the podcast, where we uncover the truth behind the mysterious forbidden texts. What is the human history we've always been taught? It's tales of wars, great individuals who changed the world, or revolutions that marked an indelible step in human progress. We're accustomed to accepting these as documented fact. But what if the history that has passed is not so simple? What if I told you that the legends of the Great Flood, of giants, or of gods are not just imagination? Is it possible that something has been concealed? In fact, we may have found the answer in a renowned ancient book, one with the power to shift our historical perception, yet it has been labeled a forgery, a deceitful record for millennia. I'm speaking of one of humanity's great legendary works, the Forbidden Book, considered an ancient, lying scripture for thousands of years. The Book of Enoch. What caused such a monumental work to be branded a falsehood? What did this book reveal about a dark, hidden part of human history? First, the Book of Enoch is an ancient text also known as the Works of Enoch. While it is not part of the standard Christian canon, it's widely used in the Ethiopian and Eritrean branches of the Coptic Orthodox Church. Canon here refers to a collection of sacred texts that hold authoritative status for a religious community. However, in the wider Christian Church, the Book of Enoch is not recognized as canonical. More broadly, the Book of Enoch certainly contains all the elements of a biblical canon and is widely used in certain regions. Yet, Orthodox Christianity deems it a deceptive and untruthful apocryphal text. It's viewed as a religious and apocalyptic text, originally in the ancient Ge'ez language. It's attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, the builder of the famous Ark. According to what's relayed, the Book of Enoch contains incredible information about the origins of demons and giants. It also mentions the fall of some angels who descended from heaven. In biblical history, only two men, Elijah and Enoch, were chosen by God for a special destiny. Enoch was the seventh generation of humanity, an ancestor of the lineage of Seth, born 622 years after Adam was created, living before the time of the Great Flood. Although many stories recount Enoch's life, it's established that he lived for over 300 years and walked with God. At the end of his life, God took him to heaven in a beautiful chariot of fire. This is why, in Christian tradition, Enoch is spoken of as a man who never died. He spent his long life discovering the wondrous secrets that God revealed. If a man was chosen by God and walked with him for 300 years, could his words be false? Could the things he saw and recorded be fabricated? This point alone makes people question why the Book of Enoch was classified as apocryphal. Enoch, led directly by God, recorded what he witnessed and heard during his 300 years in heaven, compiling the Book of Enoch, praised as one of the world's great legendary works. Everything about this book, from its discovery to its contents and its fate, is quite extraordinary. Historically, this book has mysteriously appeared and disappeared. Archaeologists have found many traces related to it. but they still couldn't definitively confirm whether the book truly existed. Many knew that the Book of Enoch recorded the origins of humanity, and that its content overturned people's strongly held perceptions. Yet, when asked specifically what it contained, they would vaguely shake their heads and move on. The strange fate of the Book of Enoch is illustrated by the manner of its discovery. In 1946, near the Qumran Caves by the Dead Sea, an area inhabited by the nomadic Arab Bedouin people, a Bedouin shepherd boy was counting his goats before nightfall and realized one was missing. A moment later, he heard a goat bleat. Following the sound, he found it coming from behind a cliff face. He rushed over, but strangely, there was no goat. The bleating came again, seemingly from underground this time. Behind the cliff, he discovered a very small hole. The goat sound was indeed coming from there. However, the boy wondered how a large goat could have fallen into such a small hole. It was nearly dark, and there wasn't much time to think. The shepherd crawled into the hole to retrieve the goat. He expected a quick end to the matter, but the cave was too dark to see anything. He stood at the cave entrance, casually picking up a stone and throwing it inside to gauge the depth. To his surprise, when the stone landed, it made a sound like a jar breaking. Overwhelmed by curiosity, he opened one of the ceramic jars. Inside, he found no gold or treasure, but a scroll resembling animal skin. Strange writing, which he had never seen before, covered the surface. He took the story back to his village chief. Thus, one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century was born. Neither the boy nor the people who hauled the jars out of the cave that day could have known that this find might change the understanding of a large segment of humanity today. After examination by archaeological experts, the writings on the parchment scrolls in the jars were identified as the earliest known Hebrew handwritten biblical manuscripts in the world. Additionally, they contained many prophecies related to the end times and the Messiah. Later, archaeologists found nearly 2,000 ancient scrolls in more than 10 other caves in the vicinity. Some were badly damaged and reduced to fragments. After testing, these ancient books were dated from the 4th century BCE to the 1st century CE. Most were written in Hebrew or Aramaic, with a small number in Greek. Because they were found in caves near the Dead Sea, they are called the Dead Sea Scrolls. According to the latest statistics, these scrolls comprise over 230 handwritten books of various canons and biblical texts, totaling over 900 manuscripts. They are generally divided into three major categories: canonical biblical texts, apocryphal texts, and special sectarian texts. The vast majority of the manuscripts are made of animal skin, with a very small number on papyrus. There is also a unique scroll made of metal, which contains a list of treasures, texts, and their hiding places. Clearly, these handwritten biblical texts were meticulously crafted by ancient people and carefully stored in sealed ceramic jars, buried deep within mountain caves. They were likely preserved to safeguard them from some catastrophe for future generations. It's not impossible that this catastrophe was the Great Flood we know of. Experts suggest that the oldest biblical text found in Cave 4 is the Book of Samuel, written in 250 BCE. Around 220 fragments are confirmed biblical texts, equivalent to about a quarter of the total Dead Sea Scrolls. 38 scrolls are canonical Old Testament books. Among the manuscripts, the first book of the Old Testament is the most frequent. This indicates that 2,000 years ago, both Jewish and early Christian adherents used the same biblical texts, and they were widely circulated. What's more notable, however, is that a considerable number of the scrolls are now considered copies of deuterocanonical or apocryphal books, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. The number of manuscripts for these two books is comparable to important canonical scriptures like Deuteronomy, Isaiah, and Genesis. This suggests that these two books were highly valued and widely circulated among the Jews of that era. But the strange thing is that the Book of Enoch was later removed from the Christian biblical canon and was not included in the Hebrew biblical canon. It was even labeled as non-canonical or deuterocanonical, with some denominations calling it apocryphal. So, what exactly did the Book of Enoch contain to be so spurned and discredited by later generations? Some say the Book of Enoch was banned because it recorded the origin of humanity in a way that was entirely unbelievable, one no one had ever considered. But perhaps that is the real origin in history that we have forgotten. This can be proven if we look deeper into it. When Enoch was 65, God directly took him to heaven, where he lived with God for 300 years. This certainly wasn't an ordinary event, especially if you truly understand its significance. Even Jesus had to shed his mortal body to return to heaven. Besides Elijah, only Enoch was taken directly to heaven by Jehovah while still alive. This suggests that Enoch's virtue surpassed everyone else's. During those 300 years, Enoch, guided by the archangel, journeyed through heaven and hell and wrote down his observations, compiling the Book of Enoch. Chapters 6, 7, and 8 of the book recount stories unknown to the world, records that Jewish and Christian believers found unacceptable. Long before the Great Flood, God had sent 200 angels to watch over the earth. They were called the Watchers. The Book of Enoch doesn't specify the Watchers' purpose on earth, only that these angels were the sons of heaven. The leader of the angels, Semyaza, noticed that the children of humankind were constantly multiplying, and the daughters of men were as beautiful as flowers, which moved him. One day, Semyaza said to the other angels, "Let us choose wives from among the daughters of men, and beget children with them." But Semyaza was also worried about incurring God's wrath, so he convinced the other 200 angels to join him in an oath. The 200 angels swore an oath at Mount Hermon, vowing not to betray each other. Each angel who took the oath chose a human daughter to be his wife. They lost their sense of shame, defiling themselves and the daughters of men. They began to live the life of normal humans, thus demonstrating the fall of the angels as we know it. Regardless of Eastern or Western spiritual traditions, the mind of lust and desire is considered the greatest internal demon. In spiritual practice, violating the precept of lust means a soul can never return to heaven. The angels then began to teach humanity knowledge that only the divine realm possessed. They taught women elegant rituals and adornments, and men metallurgy and craftsmanship, along with the knowledge of recognizing and cultivating plants. They also imparted knowledge that was not meant for humans, concerning stars, galaxies, constellations, and astrology. Why did ancient human civilizations possess such accurate calendar systems? Even today, we cannot fully explain it. The Book of Enoch seems to offer a convincing answer. If the records in the Book of Enoch are true, a big question arises. Should modern science and technology have been given to humanity in the first place? Was the environment created by the divine for humanity already perfect, without the need for such technologies? In Section 2, Chapter 8, Enoch says that the transmission of these technologies led to disorder and rebellion against God. Humanity was led astray by the fallen angels, becoming corrupted. The wives of these angels became pregnant and gave birth to giants as tall as 5 meters today. They quickly decimated almost all sources of food on earth. Humanity, powerless, could no longer provide enough sustenance for them. So the giants began to betray humanity, eating human flesh and sparing no animal, even the smallest creatures. Earth became a place of mourning. The cries ascended to heaven, accusing the barbaric and brutal giants. If you didn't know, these giants are the Nephilim mentioned in the Bible. Nothing on earth escapes the sight of the Most High. God saw the carnage and was immensely saddened and disappointed. To cleanse the earth of defilement, he decided to use the great flood to wash away all sin, giving life a chance to be reborn. The Book of Enoch describes how Nephilim Mahweh, the son of the angel Barakal, had a prophetic dream of the flood and the destruction of the great flood. The Nephilim Ohia and Hahia, sons of the angel Semyaza, had similar dreams. Many other giants also shared the same experience. This made the Nephilim realize their impending future, and they appealed to Enoch. But by then, he had left Earth. Mahweh was sent on a journey to find Enoch. The text mentions him flying with hands like the eagles. At the end of his journey, Mahweh met Enoch and pleaded for help for the Nephilim. However, they had to pay for their actions. Enoch could not defy God's will. The Book of Enoch details a message delivered to all the giants and monsters on earth. Let my judgment come upon all of you, that you shall not escape the judgment for all that you have done, and for the wives of your sons, and that through your corruption on earth, judgment is received from heaven. The earth has cried out and complained about you, and the actions of your children have brought suffering upon the earth. Therefore, when the angel Raphael comes from heaven, the destruction will begin. For a great flood will destroy all living creatures, whether in the desert or the sea. The meaning of what you saw in your dreams is the judgment of the divine. But if you now forsake your commitments to evil and repent, you may be spared. Then the great flood swept everything away and cleansed the world. The mystery of the giants was buried with it. Before the flood arrived, God had taken Enoch to heaven to walk with him. When he returned, he brought new life to the earth. Afterward, he wrote down what he saw and heard in heaven before the great flood occurred. He began by saying, I write all that I see, not for this generation, but for a future one. Why would a book of such profound apocalyptic record be listed as a forbidden and apocryphal text by later generations? Enoch was taken directly to heaven by God while alive. This suggests that God acknowledged his virtue. The Book of Enoch meets the most stringent standards of a sacred text. Therefore, many people believe humanity is incapable of fully grasping the meaning of the book he wrote. In other words, the content of the Book of Enoch contains many things people cannot explain for it to be widely propagated. However, much evidence in the canonical Bible quotes from and supports the writings in the Book of Enoch. So, what is the real reason the Book of Enoch was rejected? One theory is that the Book of Enoch directly addresses God's justice and judgment. Furthermore, it speaks of the pronouncement of judgment on the demon Satan, much like Dante's Inferno describes purgatory. This challenged human notions of right and wrong, causing massive controversy. More importantly, the Book of Enoch describes the cause of the Great Flood in a different way. Humanity did not commit the sin. The object of God's wrath was not humankind, but the fallen angels who brought disaster upon humanity on earth. God wanted to destroy them because the fallen angels caused humanity, without having passed through the crucible of moral refinement, to possess high technology, which their spiritual foundation was not worthy of. This not only failed to inspire reverence for the divine, but also caused humanity to abandon the teachings and grace of the holy, falling into the allure of technology and rampant desire, ultimately leading to antagonism against the divine and the complete destruction of their civilization. The term apocryphal scripture generally means a text that denies Christian grace or contradicts Christian doctrine, thereby undermining Christian faith. While the Book of Enoch discusses the fall of the angels and the cause of the Great Flood, it does not deny Christian grace. contradict Christian doctrine, nor undermine Christian faith. Thus, its exclusion from the canon might hint at another agenda. One more point worth mentioning is that the Book of Enoch contains several chronological contradictions with other ancient texts, and there is no complete evidence to prove that Enoch himself is the author of the book. What do you think of this work, considered one of humanity's great, legendary works? Is it reliable? Were people wrong to deem it an apocryphal, fabricated work? Perhaps to gain a clearer perspective, we should look at another extremely famous work also labeled as apocryphal, the Testament of Solomon. King Solomon is one of the Israelite kings associated with the most legends of sorcery in Middle Eastern culture. King Solomon appears in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, and the Quran. He is often described as a wealthy, greatly wise monarch, renowned for his wisdom and power, but he also committed numerous sins. Solomon was born around 974 BCE and was the third king of Israel. Solomon ruled an empire stretching from the Euphrates to the northern edge of the Gulf of Aqaba. King Solomon established the kingdom of Edom and is hailed as Israel's greatest ruler. He was the builder of the first temple for the Jews in Jerusalem. Solomon reigned over Israel for nearly 40 years before his death in 931. Tephu, BCE. At the age of 12, Solomon inherited the throne from his father, King David. According to the Old Testament, God appeared to Solomon and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon replied, asking God for wisdom and knowledge to govern your people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours? God said, "Since this is your desire, and you have not asked for wealth, possessions, or honor, nor for the death of your enemies, and since you have not asked for a long life, but for wisdom and knowledge to govern my people over whom I have made you king. Therefore, wisdom and knowledge will be given you. And I will also give you wealth, possessions, and honor, such as no king who was before you ever had, and none after you will have." Among the important records about Solomon's control over demons, the most notable is the first-century apocryphal text known as the Testament of Solomon. This text is not considered canonical by the mainstream Christian denominations. Written in Greek, the book details how King Solomon built his temple by commanding demons with a magical ring given to him by the Archangel Michael. This text remains controversial today because it is incomplete and its origin is unclear. It's easy to see that the Testament of Solomon and the Book of Enoch share striking similarities. The content of the book begins with Solomon praying in the temple, enraged by the demon Ornias, and receiving a ring with the seal of God on it from the Archangel Michael, which allows Solomon to command demons. Solomon captured and controlled the demon Beelzebub, the prince of demons, ordering the demons to build his temple. The ending of the Testament of Solomon is cautionary, describing how Solomon converted to other religions and agreed to worship Remphan and Moloch in exchange for the love of the Shunammite woman, causing God's Spirit to depart from him. The final lines warn readers not to abandon their faith, as Solomon did. The mention of dark magic, controlling demons, and the theme of abandoning faith may be some of the reasons the Testament of Solomon was deemed apocryphal. Before the Testament of Solomon, many other works related to this king were popular. In the mid-1st century BCE, the Book of Wisdom, or the Wisdom of Solomon, a deuterocanonical part of the Old Testament written in Greek, was circulated in Alexandria, Egypt. This book does not mention his ability to control demons, but focuses on concepts of wisdom. In this work, Solomon is depicted as an astronomer. This detail may link to the fact that the demons Solomon controlled were associated with constellations in the sky. The demon system related to the Testament of Solomon in particular, and all legends about Solomon in general, is complex and has many variants. The first demon that led King Solomon to the path of power was Ornias, a vampire-like creature associated with the constellation Aquarius, who had the ability to change shape. He would choke men born under the period when Aquarius was near the sun, because they had a passion for women of the Virgo constellation. Ornias said he had undergone 3 transformations. Sometimes I am a man who craves the bodies of beautiful young boys, and when I touch them, they suffer agony. Sometimes I am a winged creature flying to the realms of the sky. Finally, I appear as a lion. Ornias had the ability to prophesy and told Solomon that demons could fly to the sky to overhear God's plans. When Solomon's temple was being built in Jerusalem, Ornias appeared in the evening, stole the wages and food of the master craftsman's young apprentice, whom Solomon favored, and sucked his soul through his right thumb. Seeing the boy's distress, Solomon asked him, and he told the story of Ornias. Furious, Solomon prayed to the Most High for help to control the demon. The archangel Michael gave Solomon a magical ring engraved with a seal that granted him power. Michael commanded Solomon, "You will bind all the demons, male and female. With their help, you will build Jerusalem, as long as you carry this seal of God." Solomon gave the ring to the boy and instructed him to throw it at the demon when it appeared, and then command it to come to Solomon. Through Ornias's confession, Solomon learned that the demon was originally a descendant of an archangel and was constrained by the archangel Uriel. Solomon imprisoned him with his ring and forced him to cut stone from the quarry. Terrified by the power of Uriel and Solomon, Ornias sought out the prince of demons, Beelzebub. When Beelzebub showed disdain for Solomon, Ornias used the ring to summon Beelzebub to submit to Solomon. The strange thing is that besides the testament of Solomon, Ornias is never mentioned in any later lists of demons attributed to Solomon, and certainly not among the 72 demons of Solomon. In the Testament of Solomon, Beelzebub identifies himself as one of the chief angels associated with Venus. According to many parts of this book, he seems to be identified with Lucifer. Beelzebub claimed to cause destruction through tyrants, making humans worship demons, causing sorcerers to fall, instigating stabbings and murders, and stirring up wars. However, other Christian works from the Renaissance onward make a clear distinction between Beelzebub and Lucifer. In those, Beelzebub ranks second after Lucifer among the fallen angels. He represents the sin of gluttony in Christian belief. However, the association of Beelzebub with Lucifer is baseless due to differences in character models and symbolism. Therefore, the Testament of Solomon is further questioned for its accuracy compared to other canonical biblical works. So, who is the demon Beelzebub really, and why is he as terrifying as Lucifer? Since Beelzebub has other names like Lord of the Dung and Lord of the Flies, we can be quite certain that Beelzebub's appearance is not exactly handsome. Like many other demons, Beelzebub is often described as a small, withered, and bloated creature. Beelzebub has red or purple skin, goat horns, a forked tongue, and a long tail. However, the most famous feature of this demon is his powerful wings. This is why he is sometimes called Lord of the Heavenly Host, or Lord of the Flies. Some magical books describe that when summoned, Beelzebub appears in the form of a fly. This might sound quite harmless, but considering the ancient view of flies, one realizes the meaning is quite gruesome. The ancients believed that flies were born from rotten flesh and flew out of decomposing bodies to ascend into the air. Flies also spread disease. Beelzebub's fly is said to mimic the flies he saw emerging from the corpses of plague victims. Beelzebub is believed to be manipulative and tempts people to worship false gods, including himself. The Torah recounts that a king of Israel injured himself and ordered his servants to ask Beelzebub if he could heal him. Afterward, The prophet Elijah appeared and condemned the king for seeking help from Beelzebub instead of the true God. Despite being described as evil, Beelzebub originated from an ancient deity named Baal in the Philistine city of Ekron. The suffix Zebub was added to the name to show respect for this god. Many scholars suggest that Baal served as a god of agriculture, while others connect him with the fly-worshipping cult. When the Jews spread monotheism in the Ekron region, the local ancient gods were merged and transformed into demons. The god Baal-zebub was no exception, being given derogatory names like Lord of the Flies and Lord of the Dung. Beelzebub first appears in the Jewish Torah and in another book that is considered apocryphal, the Testament of Solomon.